Something's happening in Jarrow that most people don't know about, and it should worry every single one of us. A disused pub just meters from a primary school is being turned into a 10-room HMO, and once you dig into how it was approved, who benefits, and what was ignored, the story becomes far bigger than one building. This is about how decisions that affect whole communities can be pushed through quietly, with little scrutiny, and how public trust is eroded when profit seems to come before people. Over the next 12 minutes, we're going to go through everything I've uncovered about the Alexandra Hotel. Every red flag, every unanswered question, and every reason why this development demands far more attention than it's been given. A former pub, the Alexandra Hotel at 248 High Street, is being turned into a 10-room house in multiple occupation, just 37 meters from a primary school. At first glance, it might sound like a simple housing project. But once you start digging into how it was approved, what was ignored, and who benefits, the story becomes something very different. This isn't just about one building. It's about how decisions with serious consequences can be pushed through quietly, without scrutiny, and with little regard for the people who live there. And it's about how one planning decision created a $125,000 profit in less than a week. Let's go through everything we now know. In January 2024, the Alexandra Hotel was sold for $115,000. Later that year, a planning application, reference ST053424FUL, was submitted to convert it into a 10-bed HMO, described as being for workers. On 14th of February 2025, the council approved the application. Just 6 days later, on 20th of February, the property was sold again, this time for $240,000. That's a $125,000 profit, and not a single brick had been laid. It's also the first time this building has ever been given HMO status. That single decision dramatically increased its value, and because planning permission runs with the land, the new owner isn't bound by the original for workers promise. They can use the property for anything, including contracts with private companies to house asylum seekers, without further approval. One of the first major red flags is how the decision was made. It appears the application was handled under delegated powers by council officers rather than going before a public planning committee. However, new information suggests councilors may in fact have voted, but that has not been confirmed. We're still trying to verify whether a vote took place, and if so, who was involved and how they voted. Until that's clarified, there's a serious question mark over how this decision was made and why it was handled so quietly. Residents only found out about the development when workmen appeared on site in October 2025. By that point, the decision was already made, the sale had gone through, and there was nothing they could do. The council may argue that all the information was public, and technically it was, buried deep in planning documents and land records. But the reality is that people can't scrutinize decisions they don't know are happening. And that's exactly what happened here. Perhaps the most serious issue is safeguarding. Dunn Street Primary School, just 37 meters from the property, submitted a formal objection. This image shows just how close. They warned that placing a 10-bed HMO so close to a primary school and nursery could present significant safeguarding risks and urged the council to reconsider. Their warning was ignored, the application was approved anyway, and there's no evidence of a safeguarding risk assessment under the Children Act 2004 in the planning documents. There's also no clarity about who will actually live there. The planning documents refer only to occupiers and residents. They never explain whether the building will house working professionals, people with support needs, temporary placements, or anyone else. The police recommended single occupancy per room, suggesting 10 individual adults. And with 10 single rooms, it's clear this isn't designed to house families in crisis. That basic question, who will be living next to a primary school, was never answered. And that's a fundamental failure. The people who live around the Alexandra Hotel raised serious objections. They warned about a rise in crime and antisocial behavior, increased parking pressure on already congested streets, and the risk to children walking to and from school. They also raised concerns about overflowing bins, vermin, and litter, pointing out that 10 people in one property means a lot of waste. They flagged that work had already started as early as September 2022, long before planning permission was granted, showing disregard for due process. Some residents said they had already seen 12 to 15 people living there before permission was approved, despite the official limit being 10. And they highlighted how splitting the development into 2 5-bed HMOs looked like a way to avoid tougher scrutiny. Every one of these points was dismissed in the officer's report. Many objections were brushed aside with a simple line: a HMO is a residential use and therefore compatible with its surroundings. That statement ignores the reality that a 10-room HMO full of unrelated adults is very different from a family home. And because so much of the process happened behind closed doors, many residents didn't even know about the plan until it was too late to respond. Another major red flag is how the application itself was presented. On paper, it was submitted as 2 separate HMOs, 5 bedrooms on the ground floor and 5 on the first. That made it look like 2 small, low-impact developments. But when it came to assessing things like parking, bin storage, antisocial behavior, and cumulative impact, the council treated it as one building. This approach sidestepped tougher rules and scrutiny that usually apply to 10-bed HMOs. It's inconsistent, and it favored the developer rather than the community. Even the council's own departments and the police raised concerns. Police and community safety teams highlighted that an existing HMO directly opposite the Alexandra Hotel had already been targeted with vandalism and criminal damage. They warned that another HMO in the same area could escalate problems. Highways officers initially objected because the original plans didn't include the driveway, bin storage, or cycle parking. These are fundamental safety and access issues. Instead of addressing them properly, the developer quietly amended the drawings. The objections disappeared, and the application continued without further consultation. The developer claimed exemption from biodiversity net gain requirements by describing the project as de minimis, too small to trigger the obligation. But the site area is listed as 485 square meters, which is not insignificant. Accepting that claim without question meant no requirement to improve biodiversity or contribute to the local environment. Waste management was another major flaw. With 10 residents in one property, refuse collection should have been a serious consideration. Highways raised concerns about safety, accessibility, and hygiene risks. Yet these were dismissed after the developer sketched a bin storage area on a revised plan. There were no detailed conditions or rules to ensure proper management. Several planning conditions that should have been standard were simply left out. No conditions were placed on the internal layout, meaning communal spaces could later be turned into bedrooms without triggering new planning permission. The plan said the cellar and loft would be sealed off, but no condition enforces that, leaving the door open for future illegal conversions. No management plan or named contact person was required as part of the approval. That means if antisocial behavior occurs or waste isn't managed, residents have no clear point of contact and must rely on council enforcement, a slow and unreliable process. The financial timeline raises major questions about motive. Bought for $115,000 in January 2024. Planning permission granted on 14th of February 2025. Sold for $240,000 on 20th February 2025. That's a $125,000 profit in 6 days, achieved solely through a planning decision. No building work, no conversion, no tenants. The fact that the property was sold just days after approval suggests the application may have been made purely to inflate its value rather than to meet any housing need. Once planning permission was secured, the property became a valuable asset, especially for companies that lease HMOs for government contracts. This change of use has made the Alexandra Hotel attractive to more than just private landlords. Companies like Serco, which work with the Home Office to house asylum seekers, often lease pre-approved HMOs. This possibility is why the rapid sale and inflated value raise such serious questions. Because planning permission runs with the land, The for workers claim is legally meaningless now. The new owner is under no obligation to honor it and can use the property however they see fit within the broad category of residential use. The Council AS Own Planning Report acknowledges that an existing HMO opposite the Alexandra Hotel had already faced vandalism and criminal damage. Rather than investigate or attempt to address that, the Council approved another HMO almost directly across the street. No assessment of how this could affect community tensions, no plan to mitigate risks, just a note in the report, and a green light to proceed. Despite everything revealed so far, many crucial questions remain unanswered. Did councilors vote on this application, and if so, who voted and how? Why was a property so close to a primary school approved without a safeguarding assessment? Why was there no clarity about who will live there or how the property will be managed? Why were warnings from police, residents, and the school dismissed? Has an HMO license been applied for or granted? Was the rapid resale linked to plans for government housing contracts? Why were so many key planning conditions on layout, waste, management, and environmental impact left out? All of this information is publicly available through the Council's planning portal and the land registry. Yet because the decision was handled quietly and with minimal public engagement, most people didn't notice until after approval, when it was too late to object. The story of the Alexandra Hotel isn't just about one building. It's about how controversial planning decisions can be pushed through quietly, how warnings from schools, residents, and police can be ignored, and how public trust can be eroded when profit appears to come before accountability. It shows how a single planning decision, handled with minimal scrutiny, turned a disused pub into a six-figure asset just meters from a primary school, all while raising serious safeguarding, environmental, and community concerns. Now the question is, where else is this happening? And which HMO should be investigated next? What's happening at the Alexandra Hotel isn't just a planning story. It's a case study in how major decisions can be made with minimal scrutiny, how valid concerns from schools and residents can be dismissed, and how a single planning decision can turn a modest property into a six-figure asset almost overnight. It raises fundamental questions about transparency, accountability, and who these decisions are really serving. All of this information is public, buried in council documents and land records, but because it was handled so quietly, most people never saw it until it was too late. Now that you know the facts, I want to take this further. This can't stop with one building. If there are other developments, HMOs, or planning decisions in South Tyneside that you think deserve a closer look, tell me. Drop the address, the street name, or even just a rumor in the comments, and I'll start digging. Together, we can shine a light on what's really happening behind closed doors, one investigation at a time. The more people get involved, the harder it becomes for decisions like this to slip through unnoticed. All of the information I've shared here comes directly from publicly available records, planning documents, council reports, and land registry data. The conclusions and opinions I've drawn from that information are my own, based on what those records reveal.